out any toxic that was in her stomach. And that was when it turned really violent. She was just projectile vomiting blood over and over. And you feel helpless as a parent.
We need to discuss.
Just a few cleanups regarding exhibits, Your Honor.
Okay.
Just in conferring with the clerk earlier this morning, there's some exhibits that we thought were admitted that weren't on the list, so just to clarify that. Exhibit 796, it's my understanding we have a stipulation to admit that exhibit.
Yes, Your Honor.
796 is admitted.
Then exhibits 558 and 625. We thought they were previously admitted, but just in case they weren't or not on the list, those we didn't make sure those were admitted as well.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor, we thought those were admitted as well.
558 and 625 are admitted.
And then exhibit 830, Ms. Clark, that 830 is the next in line, correct?
Yes, 803.
Okay. So exhibit 830 would be the records that were used with Mr. Carrier's testimony on Monday. And then exhibit 831 are exhibits or a collection of documents that will be used with Ms. Carrier this afternoon.
Any objection?
And we agree with that.
Okay, 830 and 831 are admitted.
That is it for now, Your Honor. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. Anything from the defense?
No, Your Honor, we're ready to proceed.
Okay.
Please rise for the jury. Please be seated.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your service and patience. The plaintiffs ready to continue.
We are, Your Honor.
Okay.
We will call Arika Carrier to the stand, please.
Ms. Character, good sweat. Please rest your head. Standing, raise your right hand, face the clerk, and be sworn in, please.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
My name is Arika Carrier. It's Arika Carrier.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Ms. Carrier. Mrs. Carrier, would you please tell the jury where you're from originally?
I'm from Vancouver, Washington.
Where is that?
It's just outside of Oregon. It's really close. It's like 20 minutes away. It's like around the state border.
Did you grow up and go to school there?
I did. I grew up there most of my life. My parents still live in the same house. So, and I went to high school there, and I did 2 years of community college there too.
Where'd you go from community college?
I started working when I was 18 at Nordstrom's. I kind of wanted to get into interior design. I was interested in fashion, and so I started working for them, and I worked for them for over 10 years.
How was it you came to move to Las Vegas?
I kind of wanted to change in career, and I had some family down in Las Vegas. I have a brother and his family, and he's married with a couple kids, and I wanted basically open a small business with my sister-in-law. Did that for about 7 years.
So back on Monday, Mr. Carrier told us that you two met at Kona Grill. I think it was back in 2009.
We did, yes.
What's your side of that story?
I guess it's kind of funny, but I was going to Kona Grill. I was meeting a friend for dinner and her family, her husband, and she had a little boy at the time. And we're just, I don't know if anyone's been there, but it's got a patio area and we sit outside. And we were sitting outside and there was a group of gentlemen that came in to the restaurant and they proceeded to sit next to our table. And this guy just kept on staring at me nonstop. And I didn't want to make eye contact with him because I wasn't really interested. But he proceeded to kind of wiggle his way to my friend's husband, started chatting it up with him. I was kind of trying to figure out who he was married to first and which one was single. And then he proceeded to kind of chit chat with my friend. And he was kind of trying to get my story. She's single. He asked my friend for my phone number before he'd even said hello to me. And so he finally made his way around the table and eventually started talking to me, and we just got to know each other. And he said, you know, I already have your phone number, but I'd love to call you. So I said, sure, and we started dating. It was probably about 2 years, and then we got married.
And you and Mr. Carrier have 2 children?
We do.
What are their names?
Kara, which I think you've seen pictures of. She's currently 8 right now, and we have Finn, who is currently 5.
What grades are they going into?
Kara's just finished 2nd grade. She's going into 3rd grade, and Finn just finished a kinder prep program. He'll go to kindergarten next year.
Mrs. Carrier, you've been in the courtroom more or less the entire week, I think?
I have.
Has it been a long week for you?
Grueling at times, I'm sure, like you guys, but yes.
How's it felt watching testimony from witnesses like Dr. Hudson and Dr. Sands?
Alarming. You know, when we went through this experience, I don't know if we had all of the puzzle pieces, but as the years have rolled on, we've learned so much more of what we went through.
Before we talk about Kara getting sick, briefly, I just want to touch on how it was that your family came to drink real water. Could you explain that to the jury, please?
Yeah, I think we were first introduced to it at Whole Foods. We started buying the retail bottles. We would drink it. We liked the taste of it. It was kind of this smooth consistency. And so instead of continuously buying the bottled water in the retail bottles or the cases, it was difficult to try to get it home. We decided to do the home delivery service. And we, I would say we were drinking real water in 2017 or 2018. It's kind of when we started consuming the water.
I'd like to speak to you now, Mrs. Carrier, about when Kara got sick. That was in November of 2020, is that correct?
Yes.
How was it when Kara first became sick around that time?
Honestly, she was sick before that. We'd been drinking the water for several years and we gave it to her. She had it in her water bottles. She is a huge water drinker. She only drank milk and she only drank water. The kid didn't drink much more. And we had constant complaining of my stomach's hurting. I have headaches. And we just thought that that's normal. Kids get sick all the time, you know, they get a little stomach bug, but it was constant. We even sometimes would say, why is she always complaining that she doesn't feel good? And we had a couple spells in the ER. We had one where we went in and she wasn't feeling well, she was puking, she was throwing up, and they had said she was fully compacted, she had constipation when we were at that visit. But if you're referring to
Yeah, let's move forward.
hospitalization.
Let's move forward to November of 2020 and when Kara got sick, but before she went to the hospital.
Yes, my mom was in town that week, and we were gonna go out to lunch before she left, because she lives in Washington, and so she was visiting, and we decided we were gonna go out to Tommy Bahama lunch, and Kara was with us, and we had just picked her up from preschool, and we were headed over there, and she kind of was complaining, I don't feel good, and that was routinely for me, constantly I heard that, so we just kind of powered through, and we went to lunch, and she was very picky, she didn't want to eat. I was kind of hard on her a little bit. I was like, no, you really got to consume something. You haven't had much to eat today. And so, but she didn't want to eat. She literally picked at her food. We left, we ate lunch, and we walked out. And while we were in the parking garage, she started vomiting. She just puked up. And not feeling well, went home, puked up a few more times, and thought it was a stomach bug. Thought she was just not feeling good. Caught something from school, which is extremely common. And we were able to recover, you know, a couple days went by and she was okay.
What happened from there?
Later that week, she went to a birthday party with one of her friends, like classmates, at a park. You know, they had little pony rides, so they were around animals, and she was playing with kids. And we came back from that birthday party, and she's just not feeling well. She's complaining, my head hurts, my stomach hurts, and she started puking again. She started throwing up again, and we threw up most of the night. It was on and off. In her room, she, you know, has carpet and sheets, and we didn't want to keep changing those sheets. We didn't want to keep changing the linens, and so in our house there's a tile floor, and so we would take her out to the tile floor area with a puke bucket, and she would just vomit, like nonstop. You know, she would get done, 20 minutes later we'd still be, you know, puking. I'm like, we don't have anything on our stomach. How can we be puking that much? And after there was nothing left in her stomach, she proceeded to, she was really lethargic, really tired. We moved over into the living room, laid her down on the couch, and she fell asleep. And I thought, oh, this is good, you know, she needs to recover. Body, you go to the doctors and they say, yeah, you need rest. Go when you're sick. Get lots of sleep, your body can heal itself. So she fell asleep. And she fell asleep for a very, very long time. She slept on that couch for over 15 hours. My husband and I literally were worried and concerned, so we would go over and we would touch her or say, Hera, Hera, wake up, Hera, and she would open her eyes, and then they would just close. And then she would open them like a second time, and then they would close, but she wouldn't keep them open. She just wasn't there. Her body was there, but I don't think her mind was there. And at that point, we were just really worried. My husband looked her up, and her whole body was limp, it's like a rag doll, really. They have it's just like limp. It collapses. And so he put her in the car seat, and we still had the puke bucket on her lap. Kind of reclined her car seat, and she was just really incoherent. Like, I was trying to talk to her in the car, and she really wasn't responding. And so I drove to Summerlin Hospital, and I had
Can we stop you there?
yeah.
Let's show Mr. Godfrey, if you would, exhibit 700, I believe it is.
Yes,
Is this a photo of Carol?
it is.
Where is she?
She's in our living room, and it's kind of what I was sharing. She's asleep.
And is this a photo that was taken during that lengthy sleep that you described?
Yes,
Okay. So Mrs. Carrier, you were just about to get to the fact that you took her to Summerlin Hospital. Is that right?
correct.
What was it like when you took her from the car and into the hospital?
She couldn't walk. I had to carry the limp body in, and I was carrying her in, and she just was incoherent, and I was, she was 5, so it's not like you're carrying in a baby, you're carrying in kind of a big toddler. And I immediately took her into the ER, and I checked in, and normally you have to wait, right? Like, normally you don't just get right in. And so they saw that the state that she was in, she didn't even look like she was alive, to be quite honest. And so they immediately put us back in a stretcher and laid her down and went ahead and got IVs hooked up to her because they're trying to, she didn't even look like she was alive, so they're gonna go ahead and put IVs in and took her blood. And I specifically remember this because when they took her blood, I think it was a finger prick to be honest, but the nurse said, oh my gosh, she's at a 20. Her glucose is so low. And at this point, this is the only information I have, so I'm like, oh, maybe she's diabetic. You know, maybe like that's what's going on. And so meanwhile, they're hooking her up to all these different machines. They're gonna go ahead and get a couple vials of blood, but normally a child, when they get a shot or something, they're scared, right? Or she's had shots before and she goes to the doctor. She was laying there, didn't even flinch when the needle went in her arm. So I knew she was just not herself, because she would have felt that. She didn't feel it at all.
Let me show you a document related to that, Mrs. Carrier. Would you put up Mr. Godfrey's 661-4? Now, Mrs. Carrier, at the top right side of this, you'll see there's some testing levels there. And you see the one that's red about 4 or 5 down on the right side?
Yeah.
Then
Mm-hmm.
glue, I believe glue refers to glucose. And what's the level that's there?
19.
And how's it described?
Critical.
Is that consistent with what the doctor related to you?
Yeah.
At that level?
Mm-hmm.
When was it withdrawn? Were you also informed about Hera having an elevated liver level?
I was, but it was so chaotic. I mean, when you rush a child in, everybody's kind of running to try to figure out what's going on. And the first sample of blood came back and they said, you know, our liver enzymes are not normal. They're coming in abnormal. And we're concerned about them, but we don't know why they are at that state. And so they're just running tests. And the first thing that they decided to do was they asked me, you know, has she gotten into anything? Like, has she consumed or ingested any drug or medicine? And I said, no, not that I know of. And so, because I don't normally see liver enzymes at that level. And so the first thing that they proceeded to give her, I believe, was a drug to see if she had ingested too much acetaminophen, ibuprofen. And so it was to get out any toxic that was in her stomach. And that was when it turned really violent. She was just projectile vomiting blood over and over. And you feel helpless as a parent. You want to go over there and get in the bed, but you can't. And so I'm literally watching the pediatric ICU nurse pulling her hair back as she's just projectiling, at this point, blood and bile, because we haven't eaten in days. And after somebody throwing up, and she was able to kind of stabilize at that moment, they said, you know, the next step would be, I don't know, maybe she has meningitis, we're gonna do a spinal tap. And
Mrs. Carey, do you recall the medical team at Summerlin giving Hera vitamin K?
I do, yes.
And what did they tell you that was for?
It was to bring down the liver enzymes. They wanted to start seeing them reduce. It's not something they give to try to have them climb back down.
Right. Shane, could we have 661-6, please? And the vitamin K, was that done fairly early on at your time at Summerlin?
Yes.
Okay. And Shane, the general chemistry on the right there, you'll see the ALT and AST levels, Mrs. Carrier, everyone's seen these before. Of course, they're high, right?
Correct.
And you'll see that this is more than I think 24 hours after you first arrived at Summerlin. You see the date and time there?
Yes.
It's November 11 at 8:43 in the morning, right?
Yes.
Okay. Go down a little bit, please, Mr. Pepper. The glucose level is reported there again. Is that right? Do you see that there?
Yes.
Same number?
122, is that what you're referring to?
No, the down lower thing, then blue.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
19, yes, that's the same.
And then if we go to coagulation, Shane, that's the bottom box. Do you recall Dr. Hudson's testimony about INR?
I do
What was Hera's INR level?
the 8.7.
What was the number, if you recall, that Dr. Hudson mentioned being abnormally high?
8.
Hera's liver levels didn't drop as the doctors hoped they would when they gave her vitamin K.
They did not.
Mr. Godfrey, let's go now to 674-209. Mrs. Carey, you were just about to talk about the lumbar puncture.
Yes.
When they came to you about the lumbar puncture, what did they tell you?
I said, oh, you know, we want to check for meningitis, so we're going to do a spinal tap. And you're just helpless, right? As a parent, you're trusting that the doctors know what they're doing, and if this is what we have to do next, then yeah, of course we're going to do it, because I want to find out what's going on. And they didn't know what was going on either, so I said, we're going to go ahead and put the needle in her spine, and we're going to pull some fluid out, and we're going to test it. But you can't be here. You can't stay. And
Did they tell you why that was?
they didn't want her to flinch or move, or if she saw me or scream, she could be paralyzed. So they said it's best if you aren't here. And at this point, this is the first time I've left the room, because I've stayed with her literally in her bed the whole time, and I left the room, and it's the first time I started crying, because I can't cry in front of her. I didn't want her to see I was scared, and so I think all of the trauma and emotions, I walked out that door hearing her scream, "Mom, don't leave." And I walked down the hallway, kind of in the waiting room area, until I was allowed to go back in. But the thing I did was I called my sister. She lives up in Washington too, and we're very close. And so I wanted to kind of fill my family in what had been transpired in the last 24 hours. And so I called my sister, and at this point I'm just in shock. My central nervous system is just shaking because I'm so scared. I said, you know, they're doing the spinal tap right now. Her liver is not functioning, and I think I'm gonna pass out because I'm just so scared. And she said, you can't, because she's all you got. She's all you have. And if you go down, she has nobody. And so she's like, you gotta pull it together and go back in there and be strong. And so that's what I did.
Shane, can we have 661-10, please? No. One more. Okay. Mrs. Carrier, do you recall, down on the please, doctors talking to you about Hera having bleeding? You scroll down, please, Shane. It says FFP is she has acute bleeding. You see that?
Yeah.
I'll represent to you that FFP stands for fresh frozen plasma. Did doctors talk to you about that?
They did.
What did they tell you?
they told us that she needed 2 blood transfusions. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what was going on. I'm still literally waiting for someone to tell me she's gonna be okay. And so I said, okay, you go ahead and administer it. But if she needs it, it's gonna help her do it.
And did she undergo those transfusions?
She did.
Should you scroll up just a little bit? Right there, it says, right at the top, Mrs. Carey, do you see, will plan to transfer to primary children's at Utah? The recommendation.
Yes.
And so by this time, were doctors already preparing for the fact that Hera would need to be flown to a transplant center?
Yeah, this is,
How long was it between when you first heard you need to go somewhere for a transplant and when you actually got to go?
well, I'll back up a little step here. This is a vivid memory for me, one that's sketched in my mind forever. But as they were administering that vitamin K drug that's supposed to bring the AST and ALT levels down, and the doctor came in that was attending, and he said, he looked me in the face and with fear and worry. And so at that point, I knew it was maybe something bad. Because when I saw the fear in the doctor, which they do this, every day, they are seeing patients, and to see his level of concern scared me really bad. He said, what we had hoped for with the vitamin K is not working. It's actually not doing anything. If anything, her numbers are doubling. So it did nothing. And we don't have a facility. We don't have a facility for a transplant. At this point, I'm like, transplant what? I just thought they were abnormal. And he said, you have 2 options. We just can't care for her, and you gotta leave immediately. You can either go to Primary Children's Hospital, or you can go to a transplant center in Denver. And I decided, Utah would be the closest place. I wanted to get somewhere quick. I wanted to get the proper care. She was fighting for her life. So I wanted to, wherever we needed to go, I wanted to get there fast. So we chose primary.
661.8, please. Now, the last, so Shane, scroll down to the bottom paragraph, please. The last time we checked the AST and ALT levels, you'll remember it was 11/11, November 11th, about 8 in the morning. You see this note, Mrs. Carrier, it's November 11th, but now it's 20:59, so almost 9 o'clock at night.
Yes.
About 12 hours later, right?
Yeah.
And here, the doctor notes that the AST levels are greater than 6,000, ALT greater than 4,000. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
And so is this what you were referring to when the doctor said that her liver function test had more than doubled since the last test?
Correct.
The T bilirubin level is noted there as increasing. You see that?
Yes.
When Hera was suffering her liver failure, do you recall what her eyes were like?
They were yellow. It's like the whites of them were no longer white. They were just yellow.
And so ultimately, you and Hera were able to be transferred to Utah?
We were, but we had to wait for a really long time. When he said immediately, it didn't feel like immediately. I think at the time, COVID was just so heightened. And so they wanted to make sure that we got a COVID test before we left. And so we were waiting upon that. And at that time, in fact, the COVID tests weren't instant. So they had to send them to a lab, a technician had to come in, they had to wait for that, and then get the results back. So we were waiting around for a long time. We really did not leave until the middle of the night, maybe midnight.
Shane, could we have 674-131? Mrs. Carrier, this is the authorization and consent for transfer. Have you seen this document before?
Yes.
Is this your handwriting on the document?
Mm-mm.
No.
No,
Okay. You didn't fill it out, right?
I did not.
Did somebody go over this form with you?
They did. They, I don't remember how much I recall, but they showed it to me. They had me sign it. They're not checking every box with me.
Did you understand, as it says in the top right there, the Harris condition was unstable, but that the expected benefit outweighs the risk associated with transfer?
Yes.
And that she's unstable, but if she doesn't transfer, the condition might get worse.
Correct. That's why he said immediately.
Shane, can you go down to the medical risk section? Mrs. Carrier, this is the risks of the transfer. Did they go over these risks with you?
Yeah.
Did you understand this to be a life and death situation?
I did. We were in total failure of one of our most important organs. So I wanted to get out of there.
Would you tell the jury what the flight was like?
It was in the middle of the night. It was cold because it was, winter time. So I just remember it being really cold going to and from, but we were exited through an ambulance. She was not in a good condition, so she was on a stretcher hooked up to all of the proper IVs and monitoring that her vitals. And so we got into the ambulance, we rode from the ambulance to the airfield, and then we proceeded to get on a small jet, a small plane. To this day, I asked my daughter, because a lot of these other children are small, and they weren't probably talking much, but my daughter remembers everything. And one of the things that she remembers the most is I couldn't be in her bed, and I couldn't sit next to her. I had to sit behind her so she couldn't see me. So imagine a little 5-year-old, very scared, and she can't see her parent, but she's leaving on this flight. She has a nurse in front of her. She doesn't know her. But the only thing I could do was turn my hand around the back of her chair, like the back of the bed, and hold her hand while I was in my seat. And we did that for the whole flight.
What was it like when you arrived in Salt Lake City?
We landed and we got to take another ambulance to Primary Children's Hospital. And once we got there, I remember it being so cold for some reason, but we entered it through the ICU. And when we arrived, it was heightened COVID. They have a transplant child coming, potentially, and they don't know what's causing it. And so they thought maybe we had an infectious disease. So when we arrived, there was people in full-on hazmat suits, covered from head to toe because there's COVID, and then they don't know what we have. And so for a 5-year-old, it's completely overwhelming to see that, scared, traumatic, and we were emitted at that point.
Do you recall getting the liver function tests after you and Hera arrived at Primary Children's Hospital?
I do.
660-116, please. And we've seen this document a number of times already, but do you recall what the levels were, generally speaking?
Mm-hmm. Really high, 12,335. She was close to death.
We go to 661-24, please. top of this page in the first paragraph, there's a sentence on the third line. Mrs. Carrier, it says, hair is most at risk for cerebral edema, bleeding. Do you recall the doctors talking to you about a brain issue?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, it was at both hospitals, to be honest. Even in Summerlin, when they did a physical exam, they were trying to lift her limbs and talk to her and ask her questions, and she was just limp. They were wondering why she wasn't responding to them. And at the time, they don't come in and say, hey, this is what we think your child might be suffering from. They're just wondering why she's just incoherent, why she's not responding. And we know now that she had a ton of brain swelling.
We have 687, please. Mrs. Carrier, is this a photograph of hair in the hospital?
Yes.
When Hera was in the hospital and she was at Primary Children's, were any of the doctors able to tell you what was wrong? What was causing the problem?
No, we were a science project, to be quite honest. They were trying to figure it out. We would have teams come in every day. When we were in the ICU, I just remember, although it's a great hospital, and I'm glad we were there, any place to be, it's also very overwhelming because not only do they have the fellow doctor, they have interns and they have medical students, and they're all learning. And so teams of 6 to 8 people would come into our room and they would discuss what could potentially be wrong with this kid. What are some things that, as literally doctors were talking, could it be this? Could it be hepatitis? Could it be bacterial? Could it be viral? It was an hour by hour investigation to try to figure out why she was so gravely ill.
Were they ever able to tell you at Primary Children's Hospital what caused your daughter's acute liver failure?
They were not. We left there undiagnosed. We were never told what was wrong with her.
And so during the 10 days that you were there, were they ever able to tell you how they were going to fix it?
Every day we would rule things off. When they would come into our rooms, they would have charts, and they would test for it, and then they would say, "Oh, it's not this, so we can cross this off." And we'd be like, "Great, we don't have hepatitis. That's good. I mean, that's one off the list, but we got 10 others over here that we got to work through." But they said, we want to do a liver biopsy. That would help us maybe see what's going on with her liver. And they had asked permission if they could do that.
We'll talk about the biopsy in a moment. How did it feel to be in the hospital with your 5-year-old daughter? She's suffering acute liver failure, and even some of the best doctors in the country can't tell you why.
Parent's worst nightmare. If you're a parent or a grandparent, you're helpless. You want to protect them. And you can't, because you don't know what's going on.
Did anybody at the hospital ever tell you that Hera was going to be okay?
Nope.
What was the hospitalization like for Hera? What were some of the things that she had to go through?
Horrible. I think a lot of the other parents may have touched base, but the blood draws are excruciating. Horrible. I mean, this kid has probably been pricked 60 times. They were monitoring her blood, so every 2 to 3 hours, they had to come in and pull blood. And this kid had so much anxiety the minute that door would swing open. Are they coming for blood? And she was worried and she was scared. And the problem was is the veins were collapsing. They literally were rolling and they couldn't find them. So once they had collapsed in her arms, they had to go into her groin, and they had to go into her feet, and they had to go into her hands, which there's not a lot of fat here, and if you've ever had like an IV, it's really painful when you can't find veins and you stick it, and there was multiple nurses that would come in and couldn't get it, so we would get pricked 4 or 5 times before we could even get the vein. And they had to get the vein finder, there was a device that would come in and try to highlight all over her skin, or if they could try to locate a vein. She's traumatized by this. She's absolutely traumatized by getting blood work done. It is basically became a permanent scar for her. To go through that, and we are still doing that right now.
Could we have 692-1, please? This is you and Hera?
Yeah.
Who else is in this photo?
It's our little stuffed animal, Simba. When she got sick, they let her pre-K, or she was in a preschool class at the time, and they let her class know she was in the hospital and she was sick. And she was really not doing well, and so some of the parents were aware, and one of her close friends' parents were really kind, and they sent a stuffed animal to us in our hospital room, and it's Simba, that lion, and it has been kind of a savior for us because it was what we held as a comforting blanket and a security blanket for her every time they came in to get blood. And we said, Simba's your strength, he's your courage, and you hold him and look the other direction when they come in to get blood work.
You may have mentioned this already, but to this day, does Hera still get blood work done?
She does.
And does Simba always have to come with it?
She's 8 and he still comes.
661-26, please. There's another medical record from Primary Children's under the general section. Right over on the right side of that first line, there's a description. This is a description of Hera: flat effect and blank stare. Seemed overwhelmed by large crowd in the room. Do you recall Hera acting this way when the providers were in the room?
I do. Like I said, she kind of had that white coat syndrome. The minute that door would open or a doctor would come in, she would get highly paranoid and super scared and worried. And these teams would come in and talk about her. And at 5, she kind of picked up little tidbits, what's going on. And but she wasn't speaking to us. She really wasn't communicating with us. And I recall the doctors very concerned with that. Dr. Guthrie actually came to me and Ryan and said, I'm trying to show her pictures of my dogs on my phone to try to get a response from her. And she's not responding. And we're worried. We're really worried about that. And as a parent, I just thought, gosh, you're probably just overwhelming her with all these people. And now I know that's not really necessarily all the pieces, because her ammonia levels were so high, which causes that brain swelling. They were at a 68, I recall, and that's why she wasn't responding.
You mentioned the liver biopsy earlier. When you were told that they were going to do a liver biopsy for Hera, is that a procedure that you were able to accompany her to?
Hardly.
Take us through that, please.
They said, we don't let parents in when we do these procedures. But we'll make an exception for you. They said, you know, can I just at least walk down to the OR with her and stand by her side until you put her to sleep. And they said yes. I was able to do that, but I didn't want to tell Hera. I didn't want to tell her she was gonna go through that. And as a protective parent, so traumatizing with these blood draws, hysterically screaming. Times we'd even pin her down to try to get blood. Didn't want her to be scared going into a surgery. And so I said, you know, she's like, well, what are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? And I said, you're gonna go to sleep. You're gonna take pictures. You're gonna just take pictures. And she's like, but I want you to stay. And I said, well, I'm going to. I'll stay here. And then I had to leave as soon as she went to sleep. And I walked out of the room, you know, from that and just praying to God, don't take her. I hope she makes it through it.
Mrs. Carey, did they also do another procedure at the same time? They put Hera under
They did.
anesthesia?
But they did.
What else did they do?
Because the blood, taking the blood every 2 to 3 hours was such a nightmare for the child and us. They wanted to put a PICU in, and that also required her to be put under. And that was one of the reasons we never put the PICU in, is because you had to put her to sleep. And I, in the state that she was in, I didn't want to put her to sleep. And so looking back, I wish we would have done the PICU a lot sooner, because it probably would have saved a lot of worry from her with those blood draws, because as soon as we were able to get the central line in her arm, the blood draws got a little bit easier. But she did have the PICU line in as well during the liver biopsy.
How was Hera after the biopsy and the pickle when she woke up?
She was in a lot of pain. I think the doctor said, you know, for children it is painful to go through that procedure. So when she woke up, she was crying. She was complaining she was in a lot of pain. And I had called the nurse and said, no, she's awake, she's crying, she says that her side keeps on hurting. And she also was feeling her side. She knew that there was a bandage right here where they had made an incision, and she was asking me, like, what is this? Why do I have this? Because this is a new thing. Like, I mean, we had a lot of things hooked up to us, but this is one more that was added that wasn't there before. And I came clean at that time. I said, you had a surgery, and they took a little piece of your organ because they wanted to find out what's making you so sick. And she was in a lot of pain too, because I specifically remember they were worried to give her any pain reliever, you know, because then her liver has to try to work through the toxins of flushing that out if they give her any sort of painkiller. But I do recall we had some morphine.
Did the doctors ultimately talk to you about the results of the liver biopsy?
Yes.
We have 661,000. And just below the bolded portion there, under the comment, and you may recall this has been shown at other times this week, but acute injury secondary to drug/toxin. Did the doctors talk to you about that?
They did.
What did they tell you?
The first thing was they told us she had a fatty liver. I didn't know what that meant. I was like, okay. And I said, well, she likes French fries. You know, she does eat those prior to this nightmare. And he's like, no, that's not even close. He said she's got a fatty liver of a 300-pound person. That's how bad her liver is. And he also said another finding was she had ingested something very highly toxic. And I said, oh, toxic, like, could she have gotten into my husband's medication? You know, he has an autoimmune disorder. Could she have possibly ingested something like that into her liver? He's like, no. This is something, the toxicity level of this is like, and these were Guthrie's words, going out into the Oregon woods and eating a ton of toxic mushrooms. That's how bad it is. And we were dumbfounded to hear that, wondering what that could potentially possibly be.
From the time you took Ara to Summerlin Hospital on November 10, and throughout the time she was at Primary Children's Hospital, did she drink any real water?
She did not.
And as more days passed without her drinking real water, did her symptoms and condition gradually improve?
They did.
Did you stay with Ara in the hospital every night?
I did. I did not leave her side. I slept in her bed with my COVID mask on. I didn't want to get her sick, and it was everywhere, so I hardly left the room. And I maybe went and showered a couple days, right when he got there. But she would want me. She, you know, a kid wants a mom. And so I would immediately shower and come right back. I don't think I left longer than an hour.
Prior to Ara being discharged from Primary Children's Hospital, did Dr. Guthrie ever talk to you about her eating?
He did.
What did he tell you?
You know, we have a picky eater. She doesn't like, she's only likes, you know, a kid, a couple, 5, 6 different things to eat. And so they were going to take out her sugar water, because she hadn't eaten for days. And so they wanted to see if she could keep anything down. And she wasn't eating anything at the hospital, just sucked. And she wouldn't eat the food. And so Guthrie had said, you know, you got to get her to eat. If you don't get her to eat, I'm going to put a feeding tube in her. And I said, you can't do that. You got to give me 24 hours. You cannot, I said, you will take us 10 steps back if you put a feeding tube in her. And you will traumatize her. So please let me see if there's any way possible that I can work through this. And so I told my husband, like, go get her favorite thing that she loved, and at the time it was coffee cake from Starbucks. So I just said, go get a coffee cake from Starbucks, let's see if she eats that. And she did. So that was the first sign of hope that she was at least consuming something.
How was the discussion with Dr. Guthrie or other medical providers there about leaving the hospital?
He was really worried about COVID for us. I think maybe because that hospital is carries one of the sickest children in the country. It truly does. It has a whole separate wing. Cancer patients, most critical injured children are there, and COVID was even in the ICU. It was in pods, 2 doors down from us. I would watch the nurses come in their hazmat suits in and out of an ICU pod. So he's like, I'm very worried for you to stay. I don't want you to stay. I think you would be best to recover at home. And even though her liver enzymes are not normal, they're still elevated. They are climbing down. And we think it's best if you leave. And my husband and I, we didn't want to leave. I was scared to leave. I felt like I was safe there. Even though COVID was there, I felt safe, which is crazy. But I didn't want to walk out the door and have her get sick. I didn't know what had caused the sickness, right? I didn't know if she could go into the liver failure and get sick. And so we didn't want to leave, but we ultimately did. We decided that we would go. And so he didn't want us to fly. He recommended that we didn't fly, and so he said, why don't you drive back to Las Vegas? So that's what we did.
What was it like when you got back to Las Vegas? Were you able to go straight home?
We did not go home. We had our son being watched by family members, and so we knew we were in that hospital, and so we had COVID tests. We needed to make sure that we weren't gonna come back with COVID and get my parents, my sister, her boys sick. So we went and did a COVID test, but of course, it does take a process and a time, at least 24 hours. So we got a hotel. We stayed in a hotel for 2 days until our test came back negative, and we would be able to go home. So we stayed and we slept in a hotel for 2 days.
I just sleep that night.
It honestly was the best sleep of my life. In 12 days, getting woken up every 2 to 3 hours is just excruciating. And I think Kara and I slept in the bed for 12 hours straight because there was no interruptions, and we got to have a peaceful sleep.
When you, Mr. Carrier, and Hera were able to return to your house and your family was leaving, did Hera get to really interact with your family?
She did not. We're really close to my parents and my sister, and they made signs for her, welcome home. They wanted to hug her, and we told them they couldn't, and they just wanted to put their loving arms around her and care for her. And unfortunately, we told them to sit in their cars. You can't do that because I don't know what she has. I don't know what caused her sickness, and I can't possibly have her get infected with something. So you gotta just sit in the cars and leave. So she did not see anybody. She had to literally roll down the window and wave at them.
And that same rationale that you just described, the fear of her getting sick again, is that also what led to you and Mr. Carrier getting rid of the food, the water, and all those things like that in your home?
Yeah, we came home and all we knew was she had ingested something highly toxic. So we thought it's gotta be in our house. It's gotta be something in our house. So we threw everything away. We just literally took an arm and went to the fridge and dumped everything out, anything in the pantry, our water, everything.
When Hera returned to Las Vegas, did she have to undergo follow-up treatment?
She did. Dr. Gunther said when we had left that he wanted us to go and see a GI specialist within 48 hours since we left the hospital. He wanted to see what her blood levels were. And we still do monitoring care right now. And she, it took her a very long time for her AST and ALT numbers to stabilize and to be normal.
Do you recall about how long it was?
It took 6 months for them to even get within range.
Mrs. Carrier, again, you were present for Dr. Hudson's testimony. And did you hear him testify that Hera and the other children in this case likely have fibrosis on their livers?
Yeah, that terrifies us.
Why?
Because I don't know what permanent scarring that is. And I don't know what that looks like for her future, having to live with that condition. So we're worried and we're scared.
Dr. Hudson mentioned or recommends specific care for her in the future, elasticity tests, other forms of monitoring.
Yes,
Is that treatment important to you and Mr. Carey?
absolutely.
Is it something you intend to do for her?
Like next week, I would, it's a sense of urgency for us after hearing his presentation.
Overall, how's Hera doing today?
She's a good kid. She's really happy. She's really smart. She's a great big sister to her brother. She's just has a lot of stress and anxiety, and fear when she gets sick. And we kind of go through when she gets ill or something comes up, her whole central nervous system kind of shakes. That's the best way to describe it, is she just kind of can't calm herself down. She can't, it usually takes us like 30 minutes of like walking in the front yard in the grass, just breathing in oxygen to kind of calm her down. So she deals with a high level of that because she remembers everything. So if she, an onset of just the common cold, or she's puking, or she's throwing up, it triggers like, why am I the one who always gets sick?
Is that something she said?
Yeah.
Why is it when she feels that way that you take her to walk in the grass? We kind of believe in grounding. And if you go into grass and you walk on it in your bare feet, kind of has a sensation of bringing down inflammation and calming. And so that's kind of one of our go-tos is we go outside and we just try to bring down her anxiety level. Mr. Carrier mentioned this back on Monday, but have you and him made arrangements to see Dr. Guthrie again?
Yeah, we actually had a follow-up appointment because last summer she got really sick and she was puking. It scared us. She was sick for like 2 or 3 days. We were visiting Ryan's parents in Boston, and we were in our rental house and just vomiting, having diarrhea, throwing up, and I felt like I was reliving things and just worried. And she, after that bout of sickness, she started struggling with these GI acid in her chest and constantly complaining of chest pains and with, like a GERD, like acid reflux. And anytime we would eat something, she would have this pain. And so I called over to primary, and I wanted to get a follow-up appointment with Dr. Guthrie, and which is hard because he's such an amazing doctor that he's very hard to get into. And you have to wait months to see him. And so we had to wait a long time to actually get on his books to actually see him. And during that process, she's still sick, still not feeling well. We had good days and we would have bad days. And the day before, we were supposed to go see him. And we had a flight in the morning that was like at 7 in the morning, and she was sick. She was sick the night before and throwing up, and we couldn't make the appointment, and so we had to cancel it. And so we intend to try to go back and follow up with him.
Could you describe for the jury what it's like in your house now when one of you, Mr. Carrier, Finn, or Hera gets sick?
It's like the world's spinning because we're constantly worried. We don't want her to get sick. So we try to isolate anybody in the house who is sick, whether that be our son, Finn, whether that's me, whether that's her dad. We really treat her like a little tender, like, petri dish, because we don't want any germs around her, because her anxiety levels, how traumatized she is when she gets ill, is just heightened tenfold.
Mrs. Carrier, Dr. Hudson mentioned on the stand the fact that Hera has had some physical complaints, and I think specifically he mentioned leg cramping. Do you recall that?
Yeah, we've suffered a lot of leg cramping over the years, and she has a condition where she toe walks, and she's never toe walked as a baby, as a toddler, learning how to walk when they first start walking. this child was walking flat feet. She never went up on her tippy toes. And that is something that started later, you know, and she was like 4 years old. And we were consuming the water, we were drinking the water. And the doctors had said, you know, this is a neurological thing. And they don't generally see kids develop that until later, you know, they don't develop it at a later age. It's usually something that happens when you first, as an infant, start walking. So we still to this day suffer from that.
Mrs. Carrier, Real Water asked Dr. Hudson some questions about that I want to put to you, which is they asked him if the leg cramping and toe walking ever occurred before November 20th. Did it occur before?
Well, before.
Is
It
there,
didn't just start happening when we were hospitalized.
is there a difference between the cramping sensations and what you would complain of before versus what it was like
After she was hospitalized?
after her acute liver failure? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it has improved greatly. It's not as bad as it used to be, as you know, when she was younger.
Were you here for Dr. Sands' testimony?
I was,
And do you recall an interview with Dr. Sands?
I do.
How was that interview for you?
Good. I think, you know, we suffer from a lot of PTSD from this experience, and although we haven't sought help in the last several years, you don't really know you need help until something reoccurs. And so it was kind of nice to sit down. He has a very calming presence. He was able to kind of point out some risks for us and for her that we might potentially see as she gets older.
So Dr. Sands has recommended certain treatment for Hera and the other children in this case moving forward. Is that treatment that you in fact intend to get for Hera?
I think we all need it. I think we need to learn how to have some coping mechanisms.
Do you and Mr. Carrier intend to get the treatment that Dr. Sands is recommending?
Yes.
So, Mrs. Carrier, earlier in your testimony, you recalled a conversation you had with your sister when you were in the hospital. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And she talked to you about being strong for Hera.
Yeah,
Is that a conversation that sticks with you?
very much so. I feel like I have to be strong a lot for her, Hera.
Do you still feel that way today?
I do. Thank you.
Does being strong for Hera include getting her the treatment she needs moving forward?
Absolutely.
Does it include you and Mr. Carrier getting the treatment that you need?
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Carrier.
Any cross?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Ms. Carrier, good afternoon. Joel Odou, I represent Real Water. Are you ready to proceed? Are you okay? We're not going to be very long. You've seen my questions with the other applicants. First of all, I want to thank you for sharing with our jury what you and your husband and what Hera went through. I know it was not easy for you to do that, and it's probably not easy for you to hear that Real Water caused that. But I want to thank you for sharing that. I have a couple of questions about kind of your plans for the future for yourself, your husband, and Hera. In particular, and I don't want to forget this one, so I'm going to start here. Sounds like she went to a great preschool. Where'd she go?
Faith is right.
And she's going there now for, what, second grade, going into third grade?
Third grade. The preschool is separate than like elementary school, I guess.
The preschool's over at like a church, and then they go to the, where's the second and third grade?
It's all on the same street.
Oh, is it
It's
now?
within like, a couple blocks.
Okay. Town center?
Yes.
Terrific. It sounds like she's doing very well at the school. A's and B's?
Yes.
Good. So in terms of future plans, I know that you had an appointment to go see Dr. Guthrie. That didn't work out. I was not clear, though, as to the timing. It sounds like Hera got sick Was it in Boston or when you came back? Could you clarify
No, it
that
was
for
in
us?
Boston,
So you'd gone to see your parents in Boston?
Ryan's parents.
Okay. And Tara got sick while you were on the trip?
She did,
And then you came home and she was still sick
she was,
and you weren't able to go see Dr. Guthrie?
correct.
Sounds like Dr. Guthrie did a pretty good job. Would you agree with me?
He's the man who put all the puzzle pieces together, so without him, we wouldn't know.
And it sounds like you appreciate the opinions of Dr. Hudson
I do,
and you're going to follow those opinions.
I am.
And one of his recommendations for Heather was to get, I think, annual liver function tests. Did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
And that's what you intend to do?
Yeah, we
Are
definitely
you
want
doing that
to.
already?
We do blood draws, we do monitoring that way, but speaking with him, I have learned that there are other ways to monitor besides just checking the AST and ALT levels that we are very, very interested in seeing.
And it sounds like so far, so good. Again, not trying to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like she's doing okay.
I wouldn't say she's the same kid she was before this started.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that she is. I'm asking you how she's doing.
She's doing okay, she's hanging in there.
And are you hanging in there?
We have good days and bad days, but yes,
Hopefully today's not a terrible day. I think you've had good days and bad days. It's a horrific days. And that's just my opinion.
yeah, I think we all have.
Again, I want to thank you for sharing with what you shared with the jury. Again, I want to apologize on behalf of Real Water for making her sick and for what you went through and for all the medical costs that you've had to pay for her. Again, I'm very sorry for what you went through.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, last thing, in case it comes up. I was not at your deposition. It was in October of 2023, right?
I don't have it in front of me, but it sounds about right.
Okay, whoever was there, they didn't apologize for Real Water, did they?
I do not think so.
Okay, I don't think so either. So again, I'm sorry that they didn't apologize then.
Appreciate that.
Nothing further now.
Any questions? Thank you. Any questions from any jurors? Okay. Thank you. Step down, just be careful. If council could come approach. Thank you, councilors. So, do plaintiffs rest?
Yes, Your Honor, plaintiff would rest their case subject to the comment I made on the bench.
Thank you very much. So ladies and gentlemen, plaintiffs have rested, so we'll break for the weekend. Come back on Monday at 11, so back to 11. You've heard this many, many times, you'll still keep hearing it. Please listen to it and obey it. We're going to break for the weekend. During this recess, you are admonished not to talk or converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this trial. Do not read, watch, or listen to any report of or commentary on the trial or any person connected with this trial by any medium of information, including without limitation to social media, text, newspapers, television, internet, radio. Do not visit the scene of any events mentioned during the trial. Do not undertake any investigation. Do not do any posted communications on any social networking sites. Do not do any independent research, including internet searches. Do not form or express any opinion on any subject connected with the trial until the case is finally submitted to you. See you Monday at 11.
Please rise for the jury.
Okay, I don't know if you all have gone over the exhibits that were used with her, but we might have some that need to be firmed up in terms of admissions, maybe.
Your Honor, what happened is we put a bunch of the individual records into one exhibit, which is 831, which was admitted prior to
Oh,
your
okay.
testimony. So Mr. Mirkovich referenced the page numbers of that exhibit. And I think at one time he misspoke and said exhibit 700, but it's really page 700 of exhibit 831. All the references are page numbers of exhibit 831.
Oh, okay, so like, okay, that would make sense, because I have like 700, 661, 674, 692. Those are all page numbers.
Those are page numbers of exhibit 831.
Okay, that's good. I think I mentioned this yesterday, but during the weekend, take another look at jury instructions. If there's any issues, we confer. Meeting nowadays doesn't necessarily have to be in person, you know, emails, telephone calls, that's fine. Verdict form, so we'll need to be going over those probably starting Monday. Anything else, any questions, any issues?
Just in terms of scheduling, Your Honor, it's my understanding Realwater has 3 live witnesses. Ms. Olson will be over Zoom on Monday, neuropsychologist, Dr. Bailey, and then Dr. Wren.
Yes, that's right.
Oh,
Do we have the times for the days for them?
I'm sorry, well,
Do we have to limit Bailey, can we know what days?
yeah, Bailey will be Monday first thing, and then Olson will be Zoom next, and then videos to fill in that day, and then Dr. Lynn, hopefully first thing on Tuesday, which I think we're starting at 11.
yeah,
So Bailey's number 1 on,
Tuesday, or Monday, sorry.
That's my understanding.
Olson's number 2.
That's my understanding. We'll even know if anything's different.
We got all the videos worked out.
I think we're close on the videos. I think there's 1 or 2 issues that Mr. Pepperman and Mr. Hoffman are working on.
Okay.
3 videos. Which of the 2 ones?
Mr. Kaufman has the list, and he's been talking to Mr. Pepperman.
You got
Yes, he's still looking at them, so I think that's still fluid, but our goal is to have them ready over the weekend. And
Okay. That, and you all have been quite well doing that, so. Okay, anything else?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. You said we start Tuesday at 11.
Yeah, so I said we start Monday at 11, Tuesday at 11, I forgot again, Wednesday is a holiday, right?
That's next.
No, that's.
Oh, I'm a week ahead, so sorry.
a little bit faster. Right?
Yeah. So yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 11, Thursday, if we get there, probably 11. Although Thursday, I think my calendar looked a little short.
Your Honor, out of curiosity, if we finish and the jury starts to deliberate, do you bring the jury in to deliberate earlier than 11? Or do they?
Oh, yeah, that's an excellent question, yes. Yeah, so generally we can bring them, we'll ask them, but they, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Yeah, so, and we've done that, yeah, I'm glad you asked, it's the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it. Have a great weekend, Your Honor.
You too, you, we'll see you all on Monday.
Thank you.
We'll be in recess for Monday morning.